Welcome to the Channel Surfers. We're just two channel guys out here riding the waves, calling the shots as honestly and as best as we can, just trying to help you guys navigate this partner world without getting wiped out on some of the basics. I'm Jeff Lennon, and as always, my really good friend and co-host, John McCabe. John, how are you, man?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing fantastic. And as we were just discussing on the prep, I've got to, I gotta start to tailor the amount of coffee that I'm doing. These cups with the silver, yeah, they just keep the coffee nice and hot for way too long. So anyway,
Too long. Yeah, I gotcha.
anyway, so first of all, man, great to be back. I wanted to, and we were talking about some good topics, and I thought what would be a good topic for us is, and this may be like at least one of two, maybe even one of three, because I think it's a pretty broad subject. But I want to talk about the ecosystem and
hmm
what where we're at in the ecosystem. And right now you're seeing a lot of stuff with ecosystem. Some of the people we've had on have talked about it, but ecosystem selling, I think, is one of the biggest structural shifts that's happening in channel right now. And
Right.
everybody's talking about ecosystem, but I don't think as many people or as few people understand like what that motion looks like, what the roles look like, how to create that weekly rhythm, so to speak, right? So that's what I think we want to focus on today. Um, so yeah. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a great topic because I think people get confused as to the definition of ecosystem, meaning more partners, when actually it really is more about multiple partners circling around a client to get an opportunity closed, right?
Yep.
And having like technologies that help customers solve a problem and fill a gap. That's what I think is a go to more or ecosystems.
Oh, absolutely. We talk about slide decks and with all the different technologies between what Claude can do and Gamma and all these things. I just think that being honest about what you're trying to do with an ecosystem go to market, right? It is a big structural shift. And I think most people, they're more into the slide deck. I see a lot of people trying to do things with it. But if you don't truly understand it, I think it's going to fall short and you're going to fail in the execution. And I'm a big guy about let's focus on how we can go execute.
hmm Yeah, and I think the most important thing for you to really consider when you talk ecosystems, it's more of a coordinated revenue motion, but not just more partners to clog up your communications and strategy, right? It's a blend of technologies that help kind of coordinate and make life easier for a client.
Absolutely. So,
I mean, I look
oh,
at
go ahead.
ecosystem to me. Prime examples like the Apple ecosystem.
Mm.
It's multiple products that all work together. You can, reset your iPad, your iPhone very easily back to the past
Mm.
version of iPhone or iPad you're on. Same with your watch, um, messaging on your MacBook, everything you do. And if you look at how a technology sale would go, I think you see multiple devices. Let's just say simplify it. Like it's multiple devices, multiple technologies that all kind of mesh and help that customer, um, you know, get something, fill a gap and solve a problem across multiple
Absolutely.
technologies.
Absolutely. It's interesting. And again, just having goals, right? So taking something like the Apple, like for me, it's that whole interconnectivity piece, right? It's just a seamless connection between stuff. I know there's some people that are anti-Apple. Um, I could probably write a book on the things that happened to me. I mean, when they came out with the iPhone 3S, not the 3 because it didn't work with the Microsoft back on the back end at the time working with email. So being able to make that shift for me was just an amazing change. The fact that there was no instruction book, you just turned it on, it started working, and it was intuitive. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but just coming back to the whole ecosystem thing, and one of the things we've been trying to get better at least myself, right, doing these is I want to make sure that there's some tangible takeaways, right? So just making
Mm-hmm.
sure, so our listeners, right, the goal here today is talk about a clear understanding of the mental model of what an ecosystem go to market looks like, right? And maybe even having an understanding of what a 90-day, because I'm a big 90-120 guy, as well as the top three. But having a 90-day minimum viable plan or steps that you should start taking if you're building out an ecosystem. And we've had some good people on that where we've touched on it. And I just think that
Mhm.
this could actually help us, bring it to fruition. So let me ask you a question. Um, so thinking about, when you hear ecosystem go to market, what does it mean to you, or what do you think it means when you hear that?
So I would say ecosystem go to market is a coordinated, like multi-party revenue motion. And what you want to do is, and I said this earlier, surround the customer with the right
Hmm.
partners at the right time to move a deal faster and increase outcomes. Because if multiple partners are involved in the deal, they start to think about, hey, I might have other customers that we could get John or Jeff's company involved in. I think to add a little bit to that, it's not like snap your fingers and this whole thing goes to market. There's a lot of coordination and communication that needs to be done. You can't just have willy nilly go in with a client and suggest things. I think you need to know it works and everybody's on the same page. But that's how I feel. The one, how to define a go-to-market ecosystem that's coordinated.
No, I love that. I love, and it's you made an interesting point, because we always talk about communication. I think communication is paramount in every aspect of what we do. But the coordination, and I'll use a different word, because it's more about the orchestration, right? It's almost
Hmm.
like if you're going to drive and drive a channel ecosystem, you're the conductor, and you've got to figure out, where's the horn section, where's this, almost like, a conductor running an orchestra. But you have to figure out that orchestration, because in most instances, you have multiple system solutions that are surrounding one buyer, right? And how do
Yeah.
you work
Yeah.
across that multiple layer of motion and multiple partners for that one buyer, so that it is a seamless execution? And that's why I think people keep seeing it. It's like, okay, well, no solutions in a vacuum, but how do you do that? And I've always loved that, because there's this, it's almost a chess philosophy, right? There's these multiple pieces that you've got to figure out how they're going to move and what you're going to do with them to actually help a client achieve an outcome, because a single solution most times doesn't happen. I everybody's trying to build everything into their product, and we do
Yeah.
everything, and we're a one-stop shop. And but with some of the different things that clients are looking to do, it sometimes doesn't make sense. Figure out
Yeah.
where you sit and where you fit in that ecosystem, right? So to your point,
Yeah. Yeah.
those multiple partners, right?
Yeah, and something kind of came to mind right now. Like, we're in cybersecurity, right?
Hmm.
When I say XDR, you know, you couldn't define XDR to me as seamless across the board. It's different for everyone. But the big, my point about XDR is it's multiple technologies, either that your company produces or you partner with to get an XDR play.
Hmm.
It's usually network, identity, endpoint, or SIM or SOAR, or some form of those three or four combinations to make an XDR play. So
Hmm.
I always hear, "Oh, we're the original XDR," but XDR to me is a marketing term, and but it kind of highlights what we're talking about. It's creating an ecosystem of technologies that might be, multiple companies providing that XDR play for a customer, which is extended detection and remediation, right? So, if you're, I see a lot of partner or a lot of these ecosystems. I'm making, quote fingers. Um, People create just partners and alliances and marketplace pages, but they're not doing any kind of field motion.
Yeah.
If you're putting together an XDR play, you better know those technologies work together and there's integrations and they can make things happen and solve problems, or else it just doesn't work. And I think you might have mentioned this once before, but like, ecosystem theater is when, the story looks great, but no one knows who does what on Tuesday morning. Like,
Wow.
nothing can get accomplished, and you can fall on your face and fail us or not close the deal.
Wow. No, I love that. Well, and I hate to say it, right? There is. The challenge with that, and I think you nailed something, right? That ecosystem theater. There's a lot of, again, not pointing fingers at anybody, but I think there's a lot of that going on where people make it look like, look at all the partners we have and we have all these
Mm.
integrations, but what is that? How does that actually translate into the field, into execution?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just happened to be at an event earlier in the week. You start talking to a lot of these solution engineers and architects, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of nuances that I think people miss.
Mhm.
But no, I think you're spot on, and it's interesting because we've talked about this when we're talking about channel, right, and the whole channel motion, and I think in one of our previous episodes we talked about what is a partner source deal, so to speak, and I'm
Yeah.
starting to
Yeah.
get into this alignment of it is about the communication and it is about the definition of how you're defining your ecosystem GTM, your go to market. And I started thinking about this before we jumped on. So this part is maybe a little scripted, so I do apologize. But
Mm.
an ecosystem go to market is all about the coordinated multi-partner revenue model or revenue
Yeah.
motion that,
Yeah.
right, we talked about with Jay McBain, that surrounds the customer, which is another nearbound thing. You want to surround the
Mhm.
customer with the right partners at the right time to move deals forward faster and increase outcomes, which is the outcomes are coming from the
Yeah.
execution. But and I
Sure.
should probably rephrase that. So it's a multi-partner revenue motion that surrounds the customer with the right partners at the right time to move deals faster and increase outcomes. There, said it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that equals trust, and that equals
Cool.
more deals and equals more money in your pocket, right? Which is that's why we're doing this, right? Hey, speaking of money,
Ooh,
you know, um, we're sponsored now by Extreme, and I just want to take a minute to talk about money. If you're managing a global channel or a US based channel, you know that slow payouts kill partner motivation. And if you're putting spiffs and MDF programs together, you know, Extreme can help fix that. They provide the ultimate platform for channel partner payments, allowing you to instantly send global incentives, MDF payments, commissions, spiffs, and rebates, right? And rebates, oh, you talk about headaches, right? Um, but your partners could choose how they get paid. It's very simple. You could do bank transfer, digital wallet, or prepaid cards in over 140 currencies. So think about it. Stop all the manual spreadsheets and all the headaches and start calling, start scaling your channel
mm,
with an Extreme. And if you want to reach out to them, they're at www.extreme.com. They're really good people and they have a phenomenal product. So check them out and see what they can offer you and reduce the headaches that you're going through and paying out your partners.
awesome, awesome, and yes, extreme xtrm.com. And here's what's extreme, right? If you're trying to drive an actual eco go to market ecosystem and you've got multiple partners and you're trying to get this coordination, and
Yeah.
and some people may not like this, but let's call a spade and a duck, but compensation drives habit.
Hmm.
So making sure
Yeah.
that you're incentivizing the right people in the right process so that you make sure that the things are moving forward, I think is helpful. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a very altruistic aspect to this. Like we definitely want to go out. We're trying to, I mean, you want to help people. I want to help people. We're trying to solve problems. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to some forms and levels of compensation. And I think having a solution like that sounds kind of corny, and I apologize if I'm going over the top, but it's going to help. It's going to help you make sure that your ecosystem is aligned at the right place at the right time to
Hmm.
do the right thing.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
So let's come back to your what do you call it? Ecosystem theater. So
Yeah.
what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes that teams are making today when they're trying to build out an ecosystem as a brand and not just as an execution model?
Well, I think I mentioned this earlier. Like they think more partners, more alliances, or oh, let's build a marketplace page. I think that's an ecosystem. Maybe it is, but it's not. It really isn't the answer.
Mhm.
What you really need to do is build all that partners, alliances, in a marketplace page, but then have field motion. And what I consider field motion is being aligned with all the sales reps at those three categories: partners, alliances, marketplace. You can't sell on an Amazon or any kind of Google marketplace without really having the
Mm.
sales teams understand what you're doing and understanding how you're building this surround the customer motion, right? So I think they really don't think ecosystems are, something you just roll it out and it happens, and how we talk about follow up and interacting in the field. That's, I think, critical. And I think it's one way that it can fail if you're trying to just set up a partner or an ecosystem. And I think
Hmm.
building a playbook around an ecosystem would help. And with AI these days, and we're talking AI again, you can have AI design a very viable and executable playbook that helps you guide all of the parties involved to become a stronger ecosystem and realize what we're talking about. More revenue, more opportunity.
No, I like that actually. So we always talk. I know towards the end I started adding in this Monday morning feedback or Monday morning
Mm-hmm.
quarterback kind of thing. But it's interesting. Listen to what you just said, and I'm going to kind of pivot this a little bit. But part of the challenge with the ecosystem, and to your point, this ecosystem theater, right? It looks good, right? And that's what I'm saying. Even if you're using AI, I've seen people have built out amazing things, amazing decks, amazing plans, amazing playbooks, but it fails in the execution. It fails in the delivery and the execution piece. So even if the story looks great, but at the end of the day, if nobody knows what to do, when to do it, or
Mm-hmm.
how they should be doing it, what your Tuesday morning is going to, forget about Monday, man. You're sitting there twiddling your thumbs on a Tuesday, not understanding why things aren't executing.
How do they win? That, I think that's a failure, even in alliance relationships. Like, nobody knows how they win
Hmm.
and how they can sell. And I think that's what you have to define. Like, here's how we go about this, and here's how you win. Here's how I win. Um, Look, I'm a big believer in reseller plus your technology plus another technology equals getting the deal done. Uh, and those resellers probably have that trusted relationship already to help you with that ecosystem play.
Well, let's, and I'm going to use one of my old things, John. I haven't said it in a while. You're going to laugh.
Gonna laugh.
But when trying to build the ecosystem, and no, this is not what people think it is, but I came up and I started using a term to get people to kind of shift their thought and shift but also think about something kind of funny and related. But I used to call the initial ecosystem, in a very simple way, a flux capacitor. And basically it was an
Hmm.
upside down triangle because you had
Right, right.
solution A, solution B, you have your
Hmm.
partner reseller, and then you have your customer. And if anybody's ever watched Back to the Future, right, you've got your flux capacitor, basically brought the things in, brought it down. But the point
Hmm.
is two solutions,
Yeah.
bringing it together at a partner, at a reseller, at a VAR, at a who it could be an MSP. It doesn't matter. It's your ecosystem, it's your channel. How you're going to deliver that to an actual client, and it's a better together story, obviously.
Hmm.
But to your point, where you say they don't know how to win. I mean, we get into the incentives, but part of the challenge is there's no triggers. There's really no workflow with it, and there's no clear handoffs, and that comes back to that communication piece, right? Are you actually defining that motion? Are you communicating that motion? Does everybody know, oh, I have these two solutions and we need to do this, and this is how they work together, the joint solution brief, which
So
anyway.
let me just pose a question
Sure.
here. If you're a smaller company, smaller vendor, is it out of the question to create an ecosystem? And I would say no, but
Mm-mm.
I think you have to be very like on top of everything to get that accomplished. Bigger companies, probably easier because your name is known. You probably have more broader integrations to work with, and your customers might be utilizing some of those tools that are in your ecosystem target list to connect with. But I'm just wondering, what do you think of a small startup ish, maybe Series B, company that has a product that's really good and it fits well, but they want to build an ecosystem to grow revenue. You think it's a hard, road to plow for getting an ecosystem set up?
So that's a yes. It's a yes and no. So is it hard? It can be. And I think it's only hard as if you try to go too broad and too wide. So as I mentioned, just getting two things. When we talk about AI, I'll digress for a second. I tell everybody, stop trying to solve everything. Figure out one area that makes sense. How do and then start to wrap your process. You do the same thing with your ecosystem. Your ecosystem is not having 10 partners out of the gate. It's figuring out where, and by the way, when you say a small company, is it a technology company, and what do they do? And
Yeah,
we
yeah.
do this and we solve this problem, and there's a gap in the market, whatever. But that's what they do. Immediately, you have to start to, after you get that, in my opinion, you open your aperture and you got to look to the left and to the right, and where do we sit in the solution flow? Where do we sit in the problem solving needs for the client? What does that mean? And then based on that, you're either gonna lean this way to work with somebody because you're gonna help support them. You're gonna make their product better. You're gonna do something that they don't do. On the right side, you could maybe you overlap them. Like you're doing
Mhm.
five things, but two of them overlap with this partner. That's where it gets a little bit trickier because you got to figure out what are the rules in engagement. How do we want to engage
Yeah, yeah.
that? But to answer your
Fine.
question, it's I think you need to do it. I think even the small companies figuring out where you sit in the market. I use the phrase all the time, where you sit and how you fit to go solve a problem. Go figure out where you can work and be complementary.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the and I think it was Nicholas who said this to me, a lot of times these small companies and their solutions, they're basically the grout in the tile. So you have these
Mm,
big solutions that are sitting out there and they're just tiles. And
yeah.
these startups, these small series A and B, they initially come out, they're not solving, the, the global issue, but they're solving an issue for somebody, but it's enough. And we call it grout, right? You're filling the gap between these two things. That's what a customer needs. That's how you become successful, and you can build your business and you build your brand. You have a nice little business going. So, I just think, it comes back to where the focus is and what you want to do. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. But what about, like, if you're building from scratch,
Mhm.
what's a trigger for someone who's trying to build an ecosystem from scratch?
Well, I don't want to claim to be an expert in it. I mean, I've had to do it. I think you've got to look at, what are potentially, first of all, what is the market you want to go after? What is the problem you're
Mhm,
trying to solve, right? So the trigger is usually going to be some form of account signal. It's going to
mhm,
be, what is the intent? What are people looking for? How do you
yeah,
drive that? How does it fit into, what the market is looking for, where the problems are? Is there a gap in solutions? Is there a gap in a marketplace? Is there a gap? Is there, where is that gap? What are you trying to do? Obviously you have a solution and you're solving this problem. And again, figuring out where it is. So I think from scratch, those triggers are going to be the account signals, right?
mhm,
And then taking that, and I probably should look at notes here. Figuring out how do you want to go out and where you think. And by the way, I think AI can help tremendously with this, but you have to be careful because you don't want to have happy ears. But start testing, where would you actually help somebody, and is it going to actually help them, and also start thinking down the road from an ecosystem, like, who's going to help you open those doors to get there, who's going to help you deliver it, who's going to help influence those things.
mhm, mhm.
Is it something that you're looking to manage and support? Are you going to look to get work with a company that will do, are you doing tier 1 and 2, or what I'm saying? Like, there's some nuances to it. And as I said, I don't want to claim to be the expert, but I always try to tell people, just narrow the focus, figure out what is the problem you're trying to solve, and then just create some simple objectives and then go execute on it. And the whole
Mhm.
point is, how do you do that to make revenue for the company so that you can continue to do it for more people?
I like that. What about, like, the blueprint? Like, I have an idea on a couple of the, blueprint, how to really, create that motion blueprint. And I would say, you just mentioned trigger. You got to find a net new target list, talk about stalled opportunities,
Hmm.
expansion, renewal. Those are my favorite. I think an expansion or renewal is, like, I call it the worm on the hook, because it could get everybody involved and uncover where these other
Hmm.
technologies might help, help solve a problem for a client. What about regulated deal requiring compliance or partner, involvement, or even marketplace deals requiring services that get attached? That's service partners are a perfect ecosystem partner because they will work with all of the technologies, right?
Absolutely.
And and they will bring you into more opportunities than you can shake your hand at, right? So I'd say that's one part of the blueprint. What do you think is like another part of the blueprint?
Well, so what's interesting is I think the blueprint breaks into, and it's not my typical three, it's kind of the four pillars, right? So we just talked about the triggers and what are you looking for from the intent signals. We also talked about it in the beginning, right? The orchestration piece. I think that's an important pillar that you need to have.
Yeah.
Understanding, the 2 to 3, buyers that you're working or partners you're working with, so that you can address it to the buyers. Which is going to come back to that orchestration is also understanding what your ICP is. What is the ideal customer profile. But I think where
Mm.
and just look at, I'll refer back because we looked at a couple really cool solutions, especially as you get into like, and I know you asked about a small one, but I know for like the hyperscaler market right now, it's the execution rhythm, figuring out,
Mhm.
what is that rhythm going to look like? How do you want to do the mapping? How do you want to do prioritization? What is the co-sell going to look like? What
Yeah.
do joint campaigns look like? Are you doing co-marketing? And then the big one on the back end is, I think another Kyle Edmund Hayes one was, the metrics. What is the data? What are we doing? How is this executing? Is it working? I think again, AI can help us figure that out faster,
Mhm.
to make better decisions faster. What's an old saying in sales? Lose fast. Okay,
Yep.
well, if we can speed up that ability to learn faster, which learning is a lot of times is losing, I think that's key. So if I had to, I mean, I would say the four main pillars of the blueprint are going to be your triggers, your orchestration, your execution, and your metrics.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. What about what about the orchestration for the blueprint? I think I look at it as, if you can identify like 2 to 4 partners that surround the buyer and assign roles, who opens doors, who delivers,
Yep,
who influences, who integrates, which I think, if
absolutely.
you're doing this right, you need all of that, right? If you're a small company trying to build this ecosystem around a client and winning big business with a client, you need to have those components, that orchestration. Um,
It's funny. Well, I'm just so thinking about that, right? This may be a mind shift for a lot of people, and I apologize, but sometimes you're when you work with multiple partners and and you have a plan, you have your ecosystem laid out, and you're driving this communication orchestration. Partner one can usually open a door and get you in and help you do things. Partner two may validate what the solution is and the risk, and also help with the trust. Where partner three may simplify the procurement process, right? I saw this a lot in the Fed side, right? And then you have maybe even a fourth or fifth partner, right? That is actually driving the implementation, right? And they're actually so be open to, and it's hard because everybody wants control, but you could have at some point 2 or 3 partners involved in an opportunity, depending on what the
mhm.
ecosystem looks like, what the complexity of the customer and the client is. um, Obviously we all want to keep it simple. Hey, I got your Joe, your John, that's the customer, let's go. But sometimes it's not that easy. So being understanding what, and this comes back to the planning piece, understanding what that looks
Mm.
like, so that you have an ecosystem that can not only execute but has some flexibility to learn, right? Because there will be some trips, there will be some failures, there will be
Yeah,
delivery
yeah.
gaps, there will be procurement issues. um it's you talked about one of the biggest deals that you ever closed, right? That I was a part
Mhm.
of, that had multiple partners involved,
Oh
had
yeah.
to.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think, you don't need to, you shouldn't sacrifice or think there's enough partners. If it's more than four and it gets the deal done, don't deny them or ignore them. I think it helps with the overall, productivity of the offer. Um, what about like what does a deal look like? You're an alliances guy. You've been a part of these types of deals. You know that how to connect the dots and make revenue happen. Like, what does a deal look like in an ecosystem
Wow.
play?
Um, well, let's pick a market, right? So, and again, it's not 100% perfect. So, if somebody wants to kind of critique it, it's fine. But if I was to pick kind of a mid market kind of SaaS, right, the buyer needs
Hmm.
looking for, which is one of my specialties, which is around compliance and security, GRC stuff.
Yeah.
That would, for me, would be something, right? So, I'm going to look at, for mid market, I'm kind of looking towards an MSP delivery partner, right? And I need somebody
Sure.
who understands the regulatory aspects, the compliance aspects, their ability to do audit readiness, that type of stuff, and maybe even kind of, if depending on where we're at in that solution, can I leverage a hyperscalers marketplace, for example, right? And we all know the big one that we all play with, but using that for the procurement piece, right? So you've got the MSP, you've got the solution, you've got the ability to deliver it. You need a way to execute it, and that's where I think, a lot of times you got to figure out. I use the term paper. Who has paper? Who's got a
Yeah.
contract? And a lot of companies thinned out a lot of that stuff over the years. So that's what I would focus on. And then, use doing following that approach. I mean, you've got the MSP. So hopefully that MSP is the service partner for the
Could
implementation.
do the implementation, yeah, or just be the overall service. Yep.
Yeah. So, and that's where I was going back. That's why when you said that one point, I was like, you could have two, three, four partners involved, sometimes just to help you get an opportunity, to come to fruition. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of this comes down to contractual needs with clients, the amount of companies that actually hold paper. There's two big resellers with three-letter acronyms for their names, both in New Jersey, and
Hmm.
the one I think is also in Chicago. But my point is, I've seen, in our days, even at EMC, where we had to leverage them because that was the final stage of the actual procurement piece. So
Yeah, yeah,
had two other things happening, but eventually we just had them. And I'll use one of your favorite words, margin. We had to make sure there was enough margin in the opportunity for that to happen. So
yeah, yeah. So, for our audience sake, what I'm going to kind of summarize what I think actually happens in a ecosystem deal, right? Partner one opens the door. Partner two validates risk and trust. Partner three simplifies procurement. Partner four accelerates implementation. And then sales just coordinates and keeps next steps tight.
yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a good uh, playbook motion to adhere to.
Hmm.
So you can have each partner playing a role. We don't want partners not involved or not playing a role. That will kill everything. Everybody's got to be on the same page.
Yeah, I just said that a moment ago.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're kind of pushing up against the end of the hour here. Do we want to
But that's the
talk
best
about
part. Yeah.
hard
Well,
lessons?
actually, I just want to come back. I didn't mean to cut you there, but yeah, so we're on the same page, dude. I mean, it's kind of interesting, right? So understanding what that partner ecosystem looks like, right? And I think for both of us, we've had the opportunity to sell in complex situations. Um,
Yep.
what I would probably say is, there's going to be some hard lessons, right? So three things
Yep.
is number one, know who owns the orchestration and who's driving it, right? So regardless, you get three, four partners, five partners, like, I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever seen six, but I've seen enough, right, where it happens. But number one is, know who the owner is of the orchestration, know the shared operating cadences that are happening. Comes back to the communication, comes back to near bound, comes back to trust. And like I said, we talked about this previously from a different perspective, but make sure that you have a clear outline and shared definitions of what that execution is going to look like, what the contribution model looks like, who's getting credit, right? Because an ecosystem will kind of fail when it doesn't becomes everyone's job and nobody knows their job, right?
Hmm.
You see
Right.
this in sports all the time. I mean, some of the best football teams or even soccer teams, just do your job. If you're doing your job and you know your job, in the end, we're all going to end up
That's
winning.
right. What's the famous John Woodenism?
Mm.
There's no I in team, right? And everybody's got to pull their own weight to win. sports, sales, whatever. If you're not pulling your weight, you're not doing your job, you're not doing the basics,
Absolutely.
you won't see success.
So if you were to be a strategist, as we're coming up at the top of the hour, right around what,
Mhm.
30 something or whatever, but because I do want to try to leave people with a 90-day kind of at least an outline. So if you were to take and create kind of a looking at the ecosystem motion, right, from your perspective, purely strategic, right, breaking that out. I mean,
Mhm.
what's a future view look like for you?
Well, I would say within the first 30 days, you want to pick, one ICP and one use case. Choose three focus partners, maybe five, depending on what the technologies, how they integrate, how they work well together, right? Align rules around engagement and the credit for who's getting, what credit for each component, right? And then run first account mapping sessions.
Awesome.
Again, we're trying to surround the customer with all the technology that's going to help solve problems for them. And I would say in the second, 30 days, run a weekly co-sell review. How many times have we said it on the show how communication and coordination is critical,
Yeah.
and if you
Yeah.
don't do that, you're going to fail. Try to figure out a co-marketing plan that you can launch. If you're talking about better together story, doing a co-marketing campaign where we're like, hey, technology A, technology B, C, and D, we all work really well together and we can help you.
Well,
You know,
and we're
that's
both big fans of it. I mean, I've become a bigger
mhm,
fan of the co-marketing. I didn't realize I was
mhm,
doing it to a degree. I mean, I was, but
yeah.
literally having that literally as one of the first motions. But to your point, that first 30 days set your foundation. But that co-marketing piece, and that needs to run. I mean, that needs to run, and you're gonna do your A/B testing and all that. But yeah, 100% agree with that.
Yeah. And I think one thing is important, and probably all you sales guys out there, sales leaders, measure the attach rate and meeting creation. We struggle to find the right lead gen to create opportunities for partners. If you're building an ecosystem go to market, you're not going to struggle as much with leads. If
Absolutely.
everything works and you're coordinated and you're professional, your partners are going to start to find opportunities to do this again and make more money, right? I think the last 90 days,
Sit back,
put
smoke a
together
cigar,
and
John.
document a playbook. What's that?
Sit back, smoke a cigar, because the first 60. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, go ahead.
The last 30 here, document the playbook. Expand your cluster of partners. You could add a couple more partners that lend value, and then just tighten up your metrics and repeat. It's like the Sassoon commercial of the '80s. You know, you tell two friends, and so on and so on and so on, and like it expands your reach, right?
Wow.
Sorry, we're dating ourselves here,
Wow.
but yeah, I think that's
Wow.
that's really what we
That was
want to.
that was a left
If you
field, everybody. But no,
that's a good way to explain it. That's how you grow an ecosystem. You just
hundred
keep
percent,
spreading
man,
the.
hundred
And,
percent. Well, look, and I think we've reached a point. It's kind of funny because we've been working together. We're partnered together on stuff. Like it's God, it's freaking me out because we're becoming a left and right brain person right now. That's why I was sitting
Mhm.
there when we were talking about some other stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of like we're literally talking about the same thing. But here's what I love, and I know you're a big playbook guy. And I'm just going to do a quick shout out to hopefully somebody. I got to check. I don't think we had him on, but I would love to get him on. But Craig Booth, and
Mhm.
he just had a great post the other morning, and it was, the old playbooks are dead. And if
Yeah.
you're not evolving, and that's I loved your 30-60, right? Getting into that because documenting that playbook is what's going to take you beyond that 120 to 180, right? It's going to take you through the first 6, 8, months to a year. But I think the old playbooks are dead. And I think doing what we just talked about, you're going to build a playbook that is going to be aligned and nuanced to what your business is and what your need is. You probably need a framework. So I would highly suggest looking at different playbook frameworks. But
Mhm.
I definitely think that's a big play, John. So I think that was a good call out.
AI can help you create one too.
so so at the end of the day, I think the future doing that, right? I think the future is going to look like, look, your ecosystem go to market is just, it becomes table stakes at this point. And I can't probably go through LinkedIn, for less than 10 minutes without bumping into somebody talking about ecosystem.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And I think
Our good friend Kyle Edmonds, he does a great job. Oh, I love his posts,
absolutely.
and he is so entrenched in that and knows it like the back of his hand.
And he's gotten really good, man. Like his stuff, I'm impressed. He's pushing out. But I also think the partner opportunities, your partner ops are going to become orchestration opportunities. Like it's just going to become part of
Mm,
the flow, which is what you want. You don't want to have to keep working everything, right? That's the whole point of that. And then
yeah.
we'll throw in our little seasoning, so to speak, of AI, right? And the AI is the automation and the scoring and the next best steps and the best practices to drive those partner actions. You
Hmm.
start to automate that, and that's where so all of a sudden all that stuff flows, man. So no, I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think we've done a great job
We
of
beat it up.
helping understand what an ecosystem is and how to go about doing it the right way, and executing a 90-day plan to make it happen. I hope that was very helpful for our audience, because I think there's a lot of confusion around ecosystem, and it used to mean something different. It doesn't anymore, and I think we helped define that.
Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, if again, if anybody gets anything out of this, I hope that they realize that an ecosystem go to market is not just a philosophy; it's an actual
Right.
operating system. It's a set of
Hmm.
processes that you're using.
I agree. I agree. All right. Well, I think that's it for today's show. I think we did a great job. If anyone wants to get a hold of us, you could get us at www.channelsurfers.com, or you could reach us on our LinkedIn page, where we post every new episode on Tuesdays. And like I said before, Jeff does a great job with putting the posts together and creating the videos for everyone to see the snippets. And also, you could email us, john@channelsurfers.com, jeff@channelsurfers.com. And one thing to note, our website has a contact us page. If you have any questions, you have ideas for a show, or you want to be a part of the show, reach out to us through that form, and we'll talk to you and see if we can get you on.
It'd be cool though. Just as an end, first of all, is if anybody listen to this, send us your biggest ecosystem friction point. What are you seeing? What are
Yeah.
you feeling like? Because we threw a lot of stuff out there, and I don't want it to just be general hyperbole about, oh, this is what you're doing. But I do believe it is not. It's not a philosophy. It is an actual execution operation model. But share with us your biggest friction point, your biggest challenge.
Hmm. Yeah.
And if it may, and if we have to, I mean, if we have to, maybe we'll bring you on as a guest. But no, seriously, would love to get more perspective, because it's not going away, and it's becoming an integral part of the execution now. So
Yeah.
thanks, man.
I agree.
I'm done.
Good deal. Well, it's another good show in the books. Jeff, thanks for taking part in it. And we will see everyone in the next episode.
Awesome.
Until then, have a great, good luck at or happy hunting, happy
Ooh,
sales
happy hunting in the ego system.
in the ecosystem. Hey, I didn't realize that's a great analogy there. Happy hunting in the ecosystem.
Awesome.
All right. Take
Take care,
care.
everybody. Thanks, John.